This is Alan Seaborn from Winning at Home. Welcome to In Progress, a podcast about faith, life, and how we grow. And in this episode, I'm going to be talking about something that I'm guessing is on a spectrum of really directly hits where we're at right now to pretty, pretty loosely maybe, but still hits somewhat of how we find ourselves acting and living. And I don't really like how I just said that, but I think as I get into it, maybe it'll make some more sense, or maybe you'll get what I was trying to say. And I'm just going to jump into read from Philippians chapter 2, verse 14 through 16. Paul says, "Do everything without complaining or arguing, so that you may become blameless and pure, children of God without fault in a crooked and depraved generation, in which you shine like stars in the universe as you hold out the word of life." And I want to highlight, like I said, I think this is going to be something that what I was trying to say is something that touches all of us to some degree. And maybe we're in a spot right now in life where we hear this and go, oh man, that's totally me. I haven't been doing a good job of that lately. And maybe we go, yeah, I'm doing pretty good actually with that, but there are some things I can clean up. And that's this first little line that Paul has here. Do everything without complaining or arguing. And, when I first read that, my initial thought is like, okay, yeah, complaining is me talking about something that I'm not happy with. Arguing is more me addressing someone about something that I'm not happy with. And you go, okay, so if I kind of keep it internal, then I'm good. And I think that we've all found ourselves, maybe right now, maybe at some point when, I can't remember if I ever mentioned this before or not. I don't think so. But my dad and brother came to visit me at a previous job that I had. I was living about 3-ish hours away from where I had grown up, and they came out to visit for the weekend. We spent a little time together, and as they were getting ready to, or maybe not like getting in the car to leave or anything, but toward the end of our time together, my dad said, "Hey, you kind of suck to be around right now. Like, you just don't seem like you're doing very well." And maybe no one has ever come out and said it to you like that, but I think that's an experience that we all can understand and appreciate. And he did it in a very Seaborn, direct confrontation kind of a way, but he addressed what happens when we just let negativity, internally even, just grow. And so what Paul is saying here, when he says do everything without complaining or arguing, the idea of those two terms, complaining and arguing, I want to dig into when Paul is writing this, what the Greek words were communicating, what they were getting across to his audience, and maybe some things that we can kind of miss when we're reading this translation in English. So complaining, the idea behind it is really talking about a secret displeasure. And one of the things that I read said, not openly avowed, so not openly discussed and talked about. Another way that it was described was talking about muttering, where you kind of, that feeling where you're talking with somebody and something happens and they say, what? You go, oh, nothing. But you know you were trying to convey, I'm not happy about something. Now, maybe we put on in that moment that fake, oh, everything's fine. But we know we're not in the right place mentally, emotionally. And that idea is what Paul's getting at with complaining. Now, we instantly think of complaining as, I can't believe it's so hot out or cold out or rainy out, or can't believe that road's closed or there's so much traffic or da-da-da. We think of those kind of things as complaining. But when you dig into what this original word would have been, it's more of this, I'm holding this negativity mostly inside. I'll communicate a little bit. I'll let people know that I'm not thrilled about what's happening, but it's mostly a negativity that's interior, that's unexpressed for the most part. That's something that we're holding on to for ourselves. And, it's like something I've mentioned in the past, and I think it was maybe 5 or 8 episodes ago, something like that, where I was talking to someone about sarcasm. And I was explaining that, when you're just joking around, you're ribbing with your friends or your family or whatever, and everyone knows it's in good fun, that feels different than the moments that you're using it to try to express anger and try to pretend like it's a joke. We know what it feels like when we're internally, whether we communicate it a little bit or not, holding on to this negativity, holding on to what we consider, whether it is or not, justified frustration about what happened or what didn't happen, about what was said or what wasn't said, about who knows. But we hang on to this mostly internal negativity. And if we continue to do that, we get to the spot where it starts leaking out, where like my dad and brother said to me on that weekend, you really kind of suck to be around. And we know the truth of that. We've been around people who functioned and stayed in this pattern of negativity so long that they probably don't even see it. And maybe we've been there. I'm describing a moment when I was there myself, where I was so in it, I didn't even notice that I was in it. And it took somebody from an outside perspective that was willing to speak up and say, hey, something's not right. It kind of feels like, they didn't use these words, but it kind of feels like you might be hanging on to something internally. Kind of feels like you might be nursing what you consider wrongs or frustrations or things didn't go your way or whatever it is. And it's making you more of a negative person. So Paul says, do everything without that or arguing. And, I think the best way to express this is just to read a few of the different ways that this same word was translated, and depending on the context, All right. So because we're talking about arguing, I think that's why this is the comparison that's popping into my head. But we know, and I think this is probably a 10 to 15-year-old phrase, but it's the one that's popping into my head. If we say to somebody, hey, don't make a federal case out of it, what we are saying is, don't make a bigger deal out of this than needs to be made. Don't take something, a mountain out of a molehill. And we're using the phrase federal case, which has an actual meaning, but we're using it in a little phrase. I'm so bad at knowing the names of these kind of things. I think it's an idiom, but I don't even know. And you might be going, not even close. That's okay. You get what I'm talking about. And, sometimes these words that we use, based on the context, it can mean something pretty different, but has a similar, not thread that ties it together, but kind of a similar theme running through the different ways that we would understand these words. Okay, so Paul here, when he says, do everything without complaining, what we already talked about, or arguing, that word arguing, these were some of the other ways that this was translated and defined based on the context. Sometimes it talked about a balancing of accounts. Sometimes it talked about a judicial inquiry. Sometimes it talked about more in line of what we're translating it as here, of debate, argument, or discussion. So Paul's saying, do everything without complaining, which is mostly internal, a little external, but mostly internal, or arguing, which is pretty much explicitly external. And if you keep it in the phrasing, the context of some of these other definitions that I read for you, a balancing of accounts. I think that one is so interesting to think about because, often when we're arguing, that balancing of accounts, that's kind of what we're doing. We're wanting to make sure that what the other party is saying and is quote unquote getting away with doesn't mean that something is coming and being taken away from us, right? Because if we think we're in the right, and if we think we're owed some certain amount of whatever it is, if it's actual things or if it's respect or if it's consideration, and if that isn't what happens, then we start arguing, right? We start fighting for our rights. We start saying, hey, I'm not just going to sit back and take this. And we start balancing the accounts through debate, argument, discussion. And what Paul's saying here is do everything without complaining internally or arguing externally, so that you may become blameless and pure, children of God without fault in a crooked and depraved generation, in which you shine like stars in the universe as you hold out the word of life. I love that he starts that whole idea. We're doing things, everything, without complaining or arguing, so that we may become. I love that it's this progressive sense of what is in the process of happening so that we may become. And I think that if we remember that that's what we're doing, that that's what's happening, we can give ourselves a little bit more grace in the moments when we aren't there already, because we're in the process of becoming. And I just, it's really the reason that I named the podcast In Progress, because that's what we're all doing. If we're not actively trying to grow and move forward in life and faith and relationships and depth and all these things, we're missing out on what life is all about. Life is all about this in progress, this becoming that Paul writes about here. And he says that we may become blameless and pure. Another translation, I forget which one, says blameless and harmless. And again, it kind of has that connection to the same as complaining is internal, arguing is external, generally for those. Blameless points to our inner motivation, points to our inner action, not interaction, but our inner action. And we know that our motivations, we know that our intentions, we know that the reason for our action is in the right place when we're not coming from a place of negativity, when we're not coming from a place of balancing the accounts, of being ready to debate and fight for what's ours. And so internally, blameless is being in the right place, pointing toward ourselves. And then externally, the way in the NIV, Paul writes it is pure, but the other translation that I mentioned is harmless. And that's others facing, right? If blameless has to do with our motivation and inner life, then harmless, pure, has to do with our outward facing life, with the actions and the words and the treatment of the people around us. And Paul's saying, if we get to a spot where internally and externally we're ridding ourselves of negativity, we'll become inward facing and outward facing a whole lot healthier, a whole lot better off, blameless and harmless, blameless and pure. And we almost, once we think about it in that kind of a way, we almost don't even need to read on, because we know that if we did that if we took a hard look at ourselves and an honest look at ourselves and said, okay, where is there inwardly some negativity that I'm hanging on to, that I'm nursing, that I'm going back to when I need to remember why I'm right and they're wrong, why I'm good and they're bad, why I'm superior and they're inferior. If I'm not hanging on to that anymore, and if I'm not hanging on to what happens when I internalize that stuff and my negativity is focused outward toward others, we know what that would do. We know that it would make our relationships better. We know that it would make us better. We know it would make us a more pleasant and positive and uplifting person to be around. If you think about the people in your life who just by being around them, you walk away feeling better, happier. You enjoyed that time. It's not people who are negative. It's not people who, I can't remember if I've mentioned this before, but I have some people in my life that my normal greeting when I see anybody, I just say, hey, how's it going? And there's some people that I have to, when I see them, go, don't say how's it going, because I know every time they're going to have some new thing that they're going to be complaining about. And it's just like, I don't want to just listen to a negative update on meaningless stuff every time that I see you and greet you. That doesn't mean people that are going through tough stuff, I don't care to listen to it. But when I think you get the difference there, when it's people that, it's almost like this manufactured sense of, well, I'm the victim because this went wrong and this went wrong and this went wrong. My dog woke up in the middle of the night and I had to take him out. It's like, okay, that's not how you're doing. You're just wanting to complain about stuff. We know that the people who bring and give us energy and joy and life when we spend time around them, we know that those are the people who are taking Paul's words here to heart. And it's pretty cool that he ends this idea talking about being blameless and pure, blameless and harmless, children of God, without fault in a crooked and depraved generation, in which you shine like stars in the universe as you hold out the word of life. And I think it's really cool that we know what that feels like when someone is living this out, when someone is that person. We know when they're shining like a star in the universe, those are the people that we walk away from just regular interactions with them, feeling like, wow, I'm in a better place because I ran into them today. I'm in a better place from spending 5 minutes talking to this person that just brings joy. And so the challenge for us is to take a look at our both inner life and the way that we interact with other people and say, has there been some negativity that I've been nursing? And maybe that negativity comes from a genuine hurt, a genuine disappointment, a genuine mistreatment. But hanging on to that and just continuing to nurse it, continuing to allow ourselves to view the world through this primarily kind of by default negative lens, because that's what we do when we harbor that interior negativity. And if you are, if you're going, well, hey, I've been through some really tough stuff, and if I told you my story, it would make sense. I'm not debating that. I completely agree with you. When I talk to so many people that are at, they're like, well, this is what I've been through. It's like, wow, it's amazing that you're making it through day after day after day, holding on to, and not in a negative way, but having experienced that hurt and that betrayal and that pain and that brokenness. And if that's you, I want to encourage you, because that's been me. And I work with a counselor here at Winning at Home. If you're in the West Michigan area, I would highly encourage you, if you find yourself going, yeah, I think I am holding on to some negativity, but I think it kind of stems from, and you can point back to a deep hurt, a deep betrayal, a deep misunderstanding. You've been victimized or any number of things. I don't want to give an exhaustive list because I'm going to forget something. And I'm not trying to minimize the hurt. But what I want to point out is that if we keep hanging on to that, what it does is it colors the way our interior life is lived. And maybe not right now, maybe it hasn't happened yet, but that's going to leak out into the way that we treat others. That's going to leak out into the way that we are to be around. And so if you're in that spot, like I said, I would highly encourage you to reach out to a counselor. In West Michigan, get in touch with Winning at Home. And I don't even know offhand how far out our referral network goes. So if you're further away than West Michigan, we still do offer, I know, a referral network for counselors that are a little further away than, the Holland, Grand Rapids area. I'm not sure how far out that network extends, but I would encourage you, if you're listening and you're going, yeah, I'm hanging on to some hurt, and I need some help walking through what it would feel like to let that go. And that doesn't mean to say that it didn't hurt. That doesn't mean to say the person or people or situation that hurt you shouldn't have hurt you or wasn't in the wrong. That's not what this is. But it's a step toward moving forward and experiencing some healing. And so if you're in that spot, I would encourage you to reach out to somebody. And if you're in a spot where maybe the hurt and the negative experiences and emotions that you're hanging on to are more just because you've allowed yourself to fall into a bit of a pattern of negativity. Maybe it's only about one circumstance. Maybe it's only about this one person that really let you down. This one person that you feel like took advantage of you in some kind of a business deal. This one person that just for whatever reason just rubs you the wrong way. I'd encourage you, because maybe you don't have someone to tell you, like I did, that, hey, it seems like something's going on with you because you kind of suck to be around lately. I'm not going to say that because obviously I'm not with you and I don't know. But what I do know is that continuing to nurse that negativity internally, that's where it goes eventually. Maybe not yet. Maybe you don't notice it, but don't become so comfortable living in that negativity that you get to that point. Because I've been there. I've experienced it. I've been called out on it. And they were right. I was too comfortable just kind of nursing the wrongs that were done to me, the slights. And what it does over time is it colors the way you see the world. And instead, what Paul encourages us to do is to do everything without complaining, that internal, mostly negativity, or arguing, that external negativity, so that you may become blameless and pure, children of God without fault in a crooked and depraved generation, in which you shine like stars in the universe, as you hold out the word of life. Let's go shine like stars. That's what we want, right? And we do it, Paul says, as we hold out the word of life, as we experience what God has done in our lives and what he wants to do for others. So let's go live that out and let's go share it with others.